This video is over topic 12, number 1 through 5. So this is basic percent problems. We will be looking at both the equation and proportion method. So the equation method is less than 2-1, proportion method is 5-1b, but as you're doing those homework problems in either 2-1 or 5-1b, you can choose to use whichever method you prefer. So you don't need to use a particular method depending on the assignment. So looking at this, so 38% of 400 equation method is that we are going to take where you see of, that becomes times percent, replace the divide by 100 or change to decimal form. And then is or any other verb really is where you would have the equals in an equation. Here, we don't really need to worry about the equals. We have 38%, 38 over 100, or 0.38. Of becomes times 400. So there's not anything to be solved, really. It's just a calculation to do. So 0.38 times 400 is 152. In proportion form, you always take and put the percent. If it's p%, you would put that number over 100. So the divided by 100 is built in to the proportion. And then whatever we have the percent of, whatever it's a percent of, so we'll call that the of value goes on the bottom. And then the other value potentially is, but that's less clear, sometimes would go on top. So here we're looking to find 38% of 400 as a proportion. It would be 38 over 100 equals, it's of 400. So the 400 goes here. So equals what over 400? So you do 38 times 400 divided by 100, something similar. So I think for this type where you have just percent of a number, those are the given things, is the percentage and the of, doing just that equation, turning the of to times and the percent to decimal form and multiplying is the maybe more straightforward process versus solving the proportion. But either way you're comfortable with, as long as you are getting that same result, is fine. Next one, 1749 is 20% of what amount? So this is not 20% of 1749. We're not doing a multiplication. In the equation form, we would write this 1749 becomes equals 20% becomes 0.2. Of is the times, the multiplication. What amount is the unknown? Pick a letter to represent it. So 1749 equals 0.2 times A. To solve, you have to do a little bit of algebra solving the equation, dividing both sides by 0.2. So 1749 divided by 0.2 is 8745. Using the proportion method, we take the 20%, and that goes as 20 over 100. And then look for the of. It's of what amount? That's my unknown value. And so then the other number, the 1749, you can also see like 1749 is 20%. So the 1749 is the 20%. Those are connected to each other. They're both representing the same amount. So I get the proportion, then cross multiply and divide 1749 times 100 divided by 20 to get that. So here I think the proportion, especially if you're at all uncomfortable doing like an algebra solving process, but you are good at solving proportions, then this can be the easier method. But you just have to watch. Don't ever assume that like when you have a percent that it's a percent of the given number. Then what percentage of 42 is 15? So here we're looking for the percentage. That's always going to be some division of the two numbers. So finding a percentage, those two steps, there's a division, and then that gives the decimal form, and then there's converting to percent form. So if you just do the division and just stick a percent sign on your answer, no good. But there does need to be a division. So here, if I do what percentage, and I'll call that P, of is the times 42 is becomes equals 15. There's the equation. I have to solve this, dividing both sides by 42 to get the percentage is 15 over 42. When I do that division, it is 0.357 and so on. That's not, I can't just stick a percent on that. I have to do one more step, multiply by 100, or move the decimal point 2 places. And so this is 35.7%. Again, I think this is a little bit easier using the proportion method. My what percentage, I put my unknown over 100. So the times 100 part is going to be built into the proportion process. And then I look for the of 42 means I put the 42 on the bottom and then the 15 on the top. So 100 times 15 divided by 42, or equivalent calculation. So similarly, 75 is what percent of 60? If I want to do the proportion method, what percent? So P over 100. And I look for the of. It's of 60, so I put 60 on the bottom and then the 75 on the top. Equation form, this would be 75 is becomes equals what percent is P of becomes times 60, and solve by divided by 60. 100 times 75 divided by 60. 75 divided by 60 is 1.25 times 100 is 125%. And then what amount is 15% of 120? That'll be equation form, unknown amount is becomes equals 15% is 0.15 of becomes times 120. The what amount doesn't really matter. I'm just seeing, all right, it's percent of number. I'm given the of number. I'm given the percent. So 0.15 times 120, 18. You could, again, still set this up as a proportion. It would be 15 over 100 for the 15% of 120 means the 120 goes on the bottom and the what amount, unknown value on top. So you want to be comfortable, especially these types like number 1 and number 5 here. You need to be super comfortable with doing those, but also knowing when that's not the right calculation to do. So you do need to pay attention to the actual question and not just assume that that's the correct calculation. But finding a percent of a given number is going to be just a common thing in later sections where it's just part of a larger thing and assumed it would just be a minor step. So extra practice on that if you need it to make sure you're comfortable with those.